Hi, everybody. These are our answers for our practice test for our first half of our light unit. And question one is, why can't you get a sun a tan from a light bulb? And that's because a light bulb doesn't have any UV radiation. You have to have a special kind of light or be out in the sun in order to get a tan because it requires that UV light. And we just don't have that coming off, for instance, the lights in our room. Number two, what is the difference between an infrared ray of light and a ray of green light? Well, it's the same thing that's different between any of the forms of light in the electromagnetic spectrum, and that is the wavelength. We found out when we did our amplify that when we adjusted the wavelength, we got a different type of light. Question number three, tell how light will interact with each of the following things. Well, if it's window glass, it's going to have transmission. It's going to travel all the way through it. If it's a mirror, it's going to have reflection. It's going to bounce off of it. And if it's a black surface, it's going to absorb the light and get turned into something else, which is the next question. So this one is our transmission, reflection, and absorption, the three things light does when it strikes things. So the next one, which of the three things above would get warmer, and tell why? Well, the one that's going to get warmer is going to be the black surface. And because it absorbs. So absorptions make things warmer because the energy is not disappearing. It is being transformed into heat energy. Remember, the law of conservation of energy says that energy is never created or destroyed. So if you see light as a form of energy, if you see it get absorbed, it seems to disappear. It's just changed into something else. And certainly if it's a black surface, it's going to be changing into thermal energy. Question number five. Why does a prism break light up into individual colors? Now, this has got a couple parts of this question, but it's because each specific color has a specific wavelength, and each wavelength refracts at different rates. And that means when it goes through a prism, they're going to separate out. So on this one, you need to have something about the wavelength and their differential refraction. And that's that changing of the direction. 6, tell four kinds of light or electromagnetic radiation that come from our sun other than white light. We don't want to include the light we can see. And we've actually learned more than four. You could put any of the following. You could put a gamma ray, X-ray, ultraviolet, infrared, microwave, and radio waves. Those are all the kind of things that are not considered white light, all the things that are also not visible to the human eye. And you could have any four of those, and you can give yourself full credit. So that's the end of the written part of the test. Now we get to the drawing part of the test. And I'm going to show you what nice full point drawings look like. These drawings are worth the lion's share of the score on this test. So the first question you would want drawn just like this. And it is, in fact, a 6-point question. And I'm going to put a point next to every place I'm looking for to give you a point. I give you a point right there because clearly you have drawn those lines with a ruler. Light travels in straight lines, and you've depicted that with that part of your drawing. The other point you get is right here for this line of light be touching the edge of the mask right here. And then another point for the same thing down here. So now here's 4 of our 6 points. There are an infinite number of these light radians coming off of our light. We really care about these two because they define our image down here. The other thing we get a point for is the fact that we have our light emanating from a point source in our bulb. Then all the light is coming off this like spokes but we only need to really draw these two because they define our last point, which is the size of our image. Now you get this point as long as your image completely falls between these two light lines, because these are the outermost rays of line that get through the mask and they define the size of this. So if you have this really big, you lose that point. If you have it really small, you lose that point. It needs to touch on both these light extremes. And you can see how this would get off. If you were off a little bit here, that's going to put you off here. And then that's like a loss of 2 points kind of right off the bat. So again, 6-point drawing, point source, touches mass, run this side, touches mass there, straight line drawn with a ruler on both of them, comes out your image that appeared on the screen, and it is right in between those two lines that define it. Our next one, really 6 of the points are exactly the same as this one. There's no difference. You're getting a point for having this be a straight line drawn with a ruler. Another point for getting this to be a straight line drawn with a ruler. This is like the mask in reverse, but now we have a clay ball. And we're not looking at an image of light that's been shown on like here. We're looking at a blocked image of darkness because no light's getting through. And these two lines have to be touching the edges of this ball right here, which is our ball of clay, like we did in class. They can't be cutting through here. They have to be right on the edges. So you have to draw those really, really carefully. And again, because these are the closest in lines that still get through, they get blocked as soon as they get past here, and those block lines of light are what are defining our shadow. So we have a point for touching each side right on the side of the clay ball. Another point for nice straight lines drawn with the ruler because light travels straight. We have another point here, just like the last drawing, for coming out from a point source. So far, all the points look really similar to the last drawing. Okay, and then another point for having our shadow image the correct size. So now we're at 6 points. Again, same as the last drawing. The final additional point on this is for having the shadow correct. And to have the shadow correct, you need to not only have the image in shadow, you have to have all of the light that's being blocked by the ball in shadow, as well as the back side of the ball. All of that needs to be shadowed to pick up that point because that's all the places the light is being blocked that's defining that shadow image that we see. So that's that one. So we have a 6-point drawing and then a 7-point drawing. And again, the points on this, other than the shadow, are just almost identical to this. Okay. And in our final drawing, this is a simpler one because we don't have to draw as many lines of light. This one, we actually have to draw one line because one line of light, remember the light's coming off of this in all, infinite number of places going in all direction. The only line we care about though is this one because it's the one that's hitting the top of the stick or the gnomon, and it is what is defining this shadow area. So the first thing we've got is a point for coming from the point source of light. The second point is for having a straight line, once again, drawn with a ruler because light travels in a straight line. A third point is having this line touch right at the top of our stick that's poking up. This was our toothpick that we did in class. And then the final point, this is a 4-point drawing, is for having all the stuff that's in shadow in shadow. Now, a lot of times, Mrs. Brett and I see a second line of light where people will draw this down. And I think it's because they think these have had 2 lines of light. This has got to have 2 lines of light. We wouldn't mark you off for having that, but you don't need it because this line of light doesn't define anything. This line of light does. And again, it must be drawn with a ruler. All of our light was drawn with a ruler. And then again, we've got our bits in shadow. So these drawings are worth the lion's share of points on the test, and they move us right into what we're going to be dealing with in astronomy in our next unit. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.